So-called free market competition is a massive confidence trick. That's the proposition I would like to put to you. Let's start the ball rolling on this subject with the following definition of parasite. Parasite is an organism which lives in or on another organism, its host, and benefits by deriving nutrients at the other's expense. With that definition in mind, I would say that it can only be a good thing for society at large that the cost of providing public utility services be kept at as low a level as reasonably possible, while at the same time ensuring that those members of our community who may be employed to provide such services for us enjoy a reasonable standard of living and reasonable security of tenure within their employment. It is said that we in Ireland are a small open economy, as may be so. However, in my belief and in the belief of an increasing number of discerning Irish people, we have, by stealth, over the lifetime of successive interchanging Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael-led governments, become a host economy for a range of internal and external economic parasitic predators. The biggie, of course, being the so-called financial industry, a massive parasite in its own right. There has been a covert but systematic dismantling of public-controlled public utility services in Ireland over many years, certainly since the 1980s, and without question following the infusion of progressive democratic-type neoliberalistic political ideology into the national management equation. The most in-your-face example of what I have referred to is, of course, the political battles which our people bravely continue to wage to ensure that our water services are once and for all enshrined in perpetuity within public ownership, and as an already paid-for resource are not whimsically used and reused as an excuse for multiple unjust taxations. This vital battle will continue to be fought until the associated bad legislation and bad law are removed, and until the National Cash Register, which currently is Irish Water, is shut down. Another example of what I have referred to is our national refuse collection services, once the rightful preserve of local authorities who, while providing a regular, dependable and efficient service, also provided good, secure local employment. Such services are now scattered among 70 private businesses throughout 26 County Ireland. These 70 private businesses did not emerge magically overnight. Their insider owners, most likely politically connected, or at the very least well connected, were in some way or other given the nod that privatisation was in the works. One needs to bear in mind, as is currently the situation with water, we also paid for our public service refuse collection via central taxation, and still do. Can you recall any announcements about tax cuts of any kind on foot of the specific privatisation of refuse collection? Perhaps I missed something, because I sure can't. So, we are already paying via central taxation to cover the cost of provision of refuse collection. But what does the Fianna Fáil-led government of 2002 do? They start on a stealth road towards privatising refuse collection by introducing extra charges via a €5 bin tag for black bins. Most people didn't realise it at the time, but those first bin tags were the beginning of the creation of a revenue stream, which would eventually be handed over to private business. It was the beginning of artificial additional costs being forced into the community, a cost which would accelerate alarmingly in the following years in the form of increasing tag charges and, in 2008-2009, the creation of a standing per annum charge without any additional value, which would end up at €110. So we now have 70 private businesses collecting refuse from our communities. Great, I hear you say. That's competition. which according to our neoliberal free market experts can only guarantee that prices to their beloved customers are kept down, right? Sorry, wrong. Two things here, one of which specifically relates to Irish refuse collection scene and the other to matters of competition in a more general sense. No doubt, if you are not already paying for your refuse collection this way, you may be aware that by mid-2016 there seems to be an alleged EU requirement. Indeed, where would we be if we didn't have a useful excuse or two for increasing charges? For all refuse collection companies to charge by weight for all bins. I am at a total loss to see where the justification is for this change in charging method, given that the two other charging methods of bin tag and standing charge already exist, both of which could be adjusted upward, given sufficient justification. There is no doubt in my mind that no private company would go to the trouble and expense of introducing such significant change in its charging system unless its profit bottom line was going to be positively impacted. So, in the Irish refuse collection context, and in my humble opinion, there seems to be a lot more going on here. We have been preached to largely by neoliberal politicians and opportunistic business individuals about how very bad monopolies are and how they are more costly to society than so-called efficient private business. Well, as this refuse collection example demonstrates, such assertions are indeed a load of rubbish. In an article on this very subject in the Journal of the 10th of January 2016, a gentleman by the name of Conor Walsh of the Irish Waste Management Association stated, and I quote, "Bin companies have already brought in the weighing technology needed on their trucks for the new system. There will be some consolidation in the market on the back of this. At least 70 waste companies are expected to consolidate down to 40. So there you have it, straight from the horse's mouth. Your refuse service costs will likely increase significantly come mid-year, and your options to gain a better service price deal will shrink by 57% with the loss of 40 service providers. Happy days. That's privatization for you. Here's one quick example of how my costs are going to rise. Admittedly, unique to my circumstance, but when you get to thinking about it, you may also experience something like this. In surrounding back and front gardens adjacent to our house, there are many mature leaf-shedding trees which during windy winter weather deposit significant volumes of leaves into our gardens. One such is a massive tree belonging to a neighbour just the other side of our back boundary wall. Come spring, I typically spend quite some time clearing the accumulated and by then water-sodden heavy leaf litter into our brown bin. It takes a number of full brown bins to fully clear the leaf litter, the bulk of which would have come from my neighbour's huge tree. So, in effect, I will end up being expected to pay for sodden leaf litter produced by my neighbour's tree, and also from the trees on the public road. How fair is that? Finally, in relation to so-called concept of general free market competition, which in my humble opinion is a massive confidence trick. Think about this. You're with one utility provider and they push their charges up to a level you feel is too high. You then go through the hassle of having to go to another provider of similar service in search of a better deal. As soon as the new service provider you are with gains sufficient market share, they up their prices and you are back again, having to switch again. You find yourself caught in this loop of increasing cost with the added disadvantage of having to spend time frequently sussing out alternatives and arranging switching. Nobody has yet convinced me, nor are they ever likely to, that proper publicly run public utility services are in some way inferior to the profits exploitative mess which I have described. We are dealing with profit parasites here. Give me a decent public run public service any day.